This episode is brought to you by Verizon Wireless. Hello YouTube, and hello Twitch. Welcome to Watching Thrones. I'm sure you're wondering, where is Roth Cornet?
Wait, what? Oh, hi. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I know.
Hi.
So don't worry, it's just a little bit of grayscale. Her boyfriend is picking off every scab as we speak, and she's got a nice piece of wood to bite down on, so she'll be back. In the meantime, I'm Spencer J. Gilbert, filling in Eric Goldman.
Hey there, how's
our
it
Maester
going?
Eric Goldman, our Maester Michele Boyd.
Hello, hello.
And our other Maester, Lon Harris, on the couch.
Hey, everybody.
Today we'll be talking about the episode, a very special Cinco de Mayo episode of Game of Thrones, The Last of the Starks, written by Benioff and Weiss and directed by David Nutter.
Brought to you by Starbucks.
Brought to you by Starbucks. Don't leave the North without it. But before that, you may have noticed this episode is sponsored. Yes, it's brought to you by Verizon. Be the first to real time with Verizon 5G ultra wideband. Get the new Samsung Galaxy S10 5G. That's more G's than I have. Give me a G, hook it up. We also have one more piece of busy work before we dive into the episode. We're going live for the finale. We're going immediately post-episode. Some, maybe all, maybe some, maybe just some people off the street will be gathered here right after the finale ends in a couple weeks from now.
13 days.
13 days, wow.
2 episodes, guys.
Less than a fortnight.
Yeah.
We will be here talking about how Game of Thrones ends. I hope it goes okay. Now, we are going to talk about Dany and Jon, Podrick having a three-way, the more Starbucks talk and stuff like that, but I think we should start by pulling back and talk about something that I've been noticing recently, maybe in the discourse online. People are mad. People are mad on the internet. And
Wait, no.
about a lot of
That's not possible.
This is breaking news.
about a lot of things, but also this show in the last couple weeks. Eric, I know you're maybe on a different side than the rest of us at this table, and maybe Lon too.
I'm on this side.
The left hand of the king. People are complaining that this show has kind of lost the plot, that people are acting out of character, that things are happening a little too convenient.
Yeah.
Where do you fall on this?
I mean, this did, to be fair, it did start last season a bit, I think, especially, once they got past the books, there was this question, okay, what will happen now? Now that they're kind of making it up themselves. We know they talked to George R. R. Martin about sort of how it will all end. But I think this season even more, people are not quite happy, especially with there's only 6 episodes. So now every minute counts in a way.
Why are there only 6? This could easily be 10 episodes worth of plot.
Yeah. It seems like what happened, though, was that Benioff and Weiss only wanted to do 7 seasons, and the compromise was let's do 2 shorter seasons, right? So we got 7 2 years ago, I should say, 6 this year. But I feel like this year especially, with only 6, with the end so close, now people really want every episode to be a 10 out of 10. They want it to be perfect. And not only is that not happening, but I think a lot of people feel like this doesn't feel like George R. R. Martin's storytelling. And it's literally not.
Well, he
but I feel
handed them a hastily scrawled, not hastily scrawled, but he handed them a series outline. We don't know how detailed it was, whether it was just like, here's who lives and who dies, or it was like, here's how the Battle of Winterfell goes. We're not quite sure what they're working off of.
Yeah, we don't know exactly how much he told them, and we don't know how much they're going to stick to what he told them.
Well, they've already said explicitly that there are going to be some deaths and some things that happen in the bullet points that George R. R. Martin gave them that will happen, and some stuff that won't.
Yeah.
So they are going to make a conscious choice to deviate from the bullets. That probably has already happened several times.
Man
we know,
Trainer,
in the books there is no Night King, so Arya is definitely not the one to kill him because he doesn't
Break out that in the book spell. We're
It's not gonna happen.
We're going
Sorry,
hard.
just gonna go with it.
I do want to talk about, related to this episode in particular, a lot of people were upset that Cersei did not just shoot down her little brother where he stood.
Right.
Where do you land on that one?
So it was very funny. When I first came in, Spencer, I walked in, you're like, so I imagine you hated this episode.
Yes.
I was like, no, I loved this episode. I really, really enjoyed this one. And it was funny
and Eric
because...
did like it, and then I was somewhere in between.
You were somewhere in the middle. Yeah, so this works. Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh my God. Did you do this on purpose? So one of the things that I had a big issue with last episode, and one of the reasons was that I just really disagreed with how they structured the actual battle, the actual fighting strategy, the Dothraki charging out into the middle of nowhere. Yes, it was a cool visual, but I had no reason for it whatsoever. I had a big issue with that, and I was trying to reconcile that with why I didn't have an issue with Cersei just striking down everyone in front of her right where they stood. And I think what the reason was is I want our side to be smarter, and I expect our side to be smarter. And I know that show Cersei has definitely been portrayed as a lot more intelligent and a lot more cunning than the last few seasons, and so maybe now to throw that all away, to not have her just end this war in one stroke is a little weird. But I'm more okay with that than I was with this weird battle charge last episode.
Well, that's the interesting thing is you say you want the characters to be smarter, and I think that it's totally valid when people are saying characters aren't acting consistently. But I think that the forces of good have been consistently dumb. Certainly lately. And I don't think it's out of character that these people they're exhausted. They just fought an insane war. Tyrion has been getting repeated head injuries. He's got to have some
knocked out for every battle.
If he was a football player, he would be going nuts right now. He would not be allowed back on the field.
That was pure George, though. Let's just put that out there. Tyrion getting knocked out for half the battle is pure George.
It's a great budget saving move also. It's like a huge battle and then fade out.
Very Tolkien as well.
Eric, was this a moment that you bumped up on that Cersei didn't just launch a volley of arrows at him?
Yeah, it did, because especially, obviously, this was a huge moment of truth. Like, the last time he was appealing to her humanity, you're not a monster, you love your children, and of course she's going to, we knew, there's 2 episodes left, that she was not going to say, yeah, you're right, brother. But it did seem like that, that whole idea of, are characters protected, are the main characters, do they have plot armor, others don't? Because, first of all, emotionally, look, Missandei, am I saying her name right? That's a good question.
No, you got it.
They don't say it enough on the show.
But that's the funny thing about her is, like, what is she? She loved Grey Worm. She supported Daenerys, but we don't know a lot about her as a character, right? Where Tyrion is someone we are deeply invested in. I feel like the George R. R. Martin move would be to kill him right then. There's only 2 episodes left, so I know, does it really matter because I think some main characters will die in the next 2 weeks.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it does seem in a 6-episode season like they're holding back, right? It's like, they can't die yet. We need to have Tyrion have a couple great monologues before the end. So it did feel like both they were protecting a main character, and also that for Cersei, why wouldn't she at that point, if this is the last chance, and we knew she wasn't going to go along with it, but if she's saying, nope, I am who I am, and I want to go to war, it seems like that would be the move, and it would be the more dramatic and emotional move for the audience. So I did feel like this show is holding back right now in a way I don't think they would have in the early seasons.
Well, I do want to talk about plot armor and expectations and stuff like that, but just on this moment in particular, parlay, baby. What happened to the ancient art of parlay? I think that Cersei, she's always she does do ruthless things, but she always gets someone else to do the dirty work. And I think that she kind of balks when it's really her chance to, like, not shoot the arrow herself, but to really kill her brother. But she's fine, like, do it out of sight. Bronn, you go take care of it.
Well, that's part of the reason why I think I was okay with how this went down, because, she just on the surface with bringing the people into the city, like, yes, for her purposes, it's so that Dany doesn't really want to torch 1,000, innocent people. But on the surface, she wants to be portrayed as, like, the benevolent ruler, the real ruler, come get behind me. And if she, in this parlay, in this, like, peace talk, launched the first barrage of arrows, that doesn't come across very well, that the optics are bad. Yeah. So, I mean, she wants to be seen as the rightful ruler at the end of all of this. So if she had made the first move, very likely the people might have turned against her, and, she wants Dany to be the Mad Queen. She's doing everything she can to try to make her snap.
She is
and
poking
it's working.
That bear. Yeah.
Look at that dragon.
So speaking of, here's a forced segue, but a really good article that Eric wrote about Cersei's psychological profile.
I did not write it, but I posted it.
And that's half the battle.
Yes. Dr. Drea Letamendi, I hope I'm saying your last name right, Drea, but she's a clinical psychologist, works at UCLA. She's a very smart person, smarter than I am, but also she really does a lot of great analysis of fictional characters. She had a podcast about Batman, the animated series, but she did 6 different articles for us, psychological profiles of Game of Thrones characters, really looking at what makes them tick from a clinical psychologist doing this, and a big Game of Thrones fan. So yeah, we've got a bunch of articles up right now. The Arya one, for instance, I think is great, looking at everything that, we know what has honed Arya on the show into a warrior, but looking at sort of what would really drive a person like that right from the beginning when we met her, because she always pushed against what society wanted her to be. We saw that again on this episode. So there's ones for Arya, Sansa, Cersei, Jon, Tyrion, character I'm blanking on, but you should check them all out. They all link to each other.
Bran.
And not
Dissociative personality disorder.
Not Bran. We had some discussions about Bran.
Bran would just be a blank page at this point.
Yeah. Bran is emo. But yeah, no, I think they're really great articles that really sort of dig deep into what makes these characters tick.
But do you think Cersei, and you don't have to spoil the article, is she acting psychologically consistent with who she's been and who she is?
I would say yes, in so much as even when it's interesting though because she is supposed to be pregnant, and I know there's all this talk about is she or is she not, because that was the thing. I mean, Tyrion said it out loud. It's like the one thing that humanized her always was protecting her children.
Yeah.
So if she really is pregnant, does she think this is the best move to keep that child alive? I think is the big question. Or is she now really numb to all that because she lost all her other children?
Yeah.
I think it's consistent.
Is she really pregnant? I mean, Qyburn gives her the nod, but I
believe she is. At
Yeah.
this point,
She
I
is.
do.
I think
I
she
but
feel
like with
too.
a smoke baby or like something crazy.
No, I honestly
Okay.
think she's just straight up pregnant with
healthy
Jaime's
human
baby.
baby. Yeah.
Honestly, because I don't believe that's going to come to term and it's going to be a healthy child.
Although,
but
sibling
at this-
relationships, it's a roll
but
of the dice every time.
Totally, exactly. But right now, as far as her
Be a
pregnancy,
merman.
no, I believe she is pregnant. I think the show has pretty much whacked us over the head with that enough times.
Yeah.
Plus the fact of going back to, her same old lie of telling a quasi father that it's his when it's not. No, I think she's pregnant.
Okay.
And I think that, I think it is consistent when you look at who she was at the beginning of the show. She was always nasty, but she was also, you were kind of saying something like this, where it's like, she didn't want to kill Ned, right? She thought it was a smarter move to keep him alive, send him to the wall. It was Joffrey who did that. But I think she's only gotten colder as the show went on, as she lost more children, as she lost more personally, and
The
had
walk
to
of
endure
shame.
the walk of shame.
Yeah.
It turned a cruel person even worse.
Yeah.
So I think at this point it is consistent for her to just say,
And it's
"Screw
kind
it."
of the road we're walking down with Dany in the last couple episodes, which is a little too fast for my taste, but
Yeah.
go figure. I want to return to the plot armor question.
Yeah,
Are there people who you think should be dead right now that aren't?
I mean, I had bet money that Missandei was going to die before Grey Worm, so little vindicated
They were
on
not
that
going to go
one.
to that beach together.
No.
I think we all knew
that
that.
was just not happening. And I thought Grey Worm was the obvious, so I was like, okay, well, subversion, let's go with Missandei. I also just actually want to point something out that I didn't notice until I saw a Reddit thing, is that, remember in the last episode with the fireside chat and everything, and Tyrion said something along the lines of, I bet we'll all live. Well, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
They all did. Every single person in that room lived. So there were a couple times during this episode that I wanted to call out that I just noticed personally. There's a conversation with Tyrion and Varys where both of them are, I think Tyrion needs to stop with the predictions. He's like, I don't think we're gonna live. Tyrion basically predicts his and Varys' own death. Varys' death has already been predicted by Melisandre. I mean, that even for me bumped the odds up on Tyrion not making it through the rest of the series.
Right.
Also, when the Hound and Arya are going back down from Winterfell, the Hound says, I don't plan on coming back. Arya says, I don't either. I don't think they're talking about just
Yeah.
Winterfell. Again, maybe not. Maybe
No,
not.
I know. I just don't
I've had money
believe.
on Arya not making it the whole time. So I think, with the Hound, with possible Clegane Bowl and Arya, obviously, unfinished business in King's Landing, and we can talk about that. But I think it's, odds went up that neither of them are going to survive either. We'll
Really?
see.
Because to me, Arya's got the strongest plot armor of all at this point.
So I think so too. It'd be a surprise.
It would be a
But
it would be a shock.
I've gotten to the point with the show where I'm listening to what they're telling us rather than necessarily trying to overlook it. Like it really feels like a lot of the dialogue in the last couple episodes and perhaps in this one as well is really just straight out telling us what they're going to do. So I'm paying more attention.
Well,
Arya was the lead character I most thought could die during the Battle of Winterfell, but now that she's made it through, now that makes me think she's going to make it to the end of the series.
yeah, it's the same reason I think that Jon Snow is going to make it, because you can't kill him twice. Once he died and got brought back
I
to life,
agree.
and that also to me informs kind of his character, why he's just like, oh, everything will turn out fine, blah blah blah, is because
Apparently everyone's cool with him being brought back, by the way. Tony's just like, he died,
Look at
came
him.
back, he got
Achievement
killed.
unlocked.
It's a great story. Let him tell it.
It's a great zombie.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think I said it last week, but I think we're being lulled into a false sense of security.
Yeah.
And you did mention that, you don't think everyone's going to make it out alive.
Right.
But I really think this show, and maybe it's naive at this point, because it has been a little fan servicey this season and half of last, but I do think they have it in them to pull the rug out from under us one more time.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
I really hope so.
That's the show. That's what the show's been for so long. They can't completely throw that out.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like after the last episode, I kind of came to this one. I tried to just come to it with a blank slate because I really didn't like a lot of the last episode. And I really wanted to try to enjoy this show. And there was a lot about this episode I loved. Like, you got back to the stuff that I really enjoyed. Conversations between specific characters that we haven't seen in a long time, even just Tyrion and Varys. You just got to see a lot more of what I really enjoy watching. So that made everything else kind of bearable. But again, like, I think now at this point, I'm trying very hard not to immediately look for what I think should be happening and just try to enjoy what they're feeding me. And I mean, like, force feeding me.
And that includes Starbucks.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's my favorite part was the first half of the episode. I loved the aftermath of the battle, the different reactions from Dany, feeling more and more isolated as people were drawn more and more to Jon and the other Northerners, and that sense of isolation was really palpable. The Jaime Brienne stuff I thought was great, and it was just nice to see everyone just hanging out drinking for a change.
I liked how I actually really liked how that was done because it began kind of grim, which makes sense because they just lost so many people, but then they all started drinking and sort of getting along better, and there was
reaffirmation of life.
Well, here's how it began. Was a very satisfyingly symmetrical funeral pyre. The Unsullied must have done that. That looks great.
And although I do feel like there should be so many corpses in there.
Yeah. When they were going over, I mean, I want to keep talking about how lovely this beginning scene was, but like when they were talking about how many troops they lost later in the episode, I was like, wait, that was it?
I thought
they lost like all the Unsullied, not just half.
The Dothraki, I thought they all
were
gone.
The people who were then they turned into little flavor crystals at the end, right? They don't have to bury them.
No, because we saw Lyanna be resurrected.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so the dead just fall back down dead, essentially.
It's the White Walkers
that go ice crystal. Yeah. Everything else just sort of just falls.
Right. Well.
So which was nice because then we get to say goodbye to Lyanna, and I really liked the characters they chose to go to each individual. Like Sam with Ed. I enjoyed that. It was a nice moment to begin the episode on.
Really must have stunk though. I mean, in
my God.
a assuredly smelly,
no,
smelly
they're all
show.
cold. They're frozen, you guys. Like, it's fine. Although, I mean, I'm sorry, but when Dany leans down to kiss Jorah on the forehead, we're like, oh, best friends forever. It's just like.
Also, since they never really dealt with like the who was resurrected in the crypts thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Arya has ever talked about Rickon dying. Right?
Yeah.
And so, because Rickon is the only
scene.
person who would probably have been in that crypt of significance. I know significance is a loose word with Rickon, but it just felt like, we got to put Rickon back in.
Yeah, he was the one, if we're going to see anybody, I expected to see him. But I think they've stated that you weren't meant to recognize any of the corpses down there. There was a bit going around with like a side-by-side of Maester Luwin and one of the possible corpses, and no.
Well, fair enough. Speaking of death, we have a death poll going.
We do.
On that fandom.com there. Yeah. Eric, who's in the lead? Losing?
This past week, the one we had going, because we do it every week going into the next episode, and the one we had going into this episode, the winner, quote unquote, was Euron, and who obviously not only did he not die, but he was triumphant in this episode. He's thriving.
He's going to buy himself a new pair of leather pants.
Flirty and thriving.
But a lot of people, it's funny because I looked at the comments and, because we put other as a selection, and so many people were like, no one's going to die in this episode. But coming out of the Battle of Winterfell, they felt that like this would be a Death 3 episode, which, they did kind of try to...
Have you not watched the show, guys?
Exactly. They try to make you think, for that first half, no one's going to die. But then obviously we lost a dragon, we lost Missandei, so it was like, So I think a lot of people were surprised by this particular episode who was going to die because they thought it'd be no one or Euron, but Euron just keeps cackling, he just keeps going. But we have the poll up now for the next week's episode, which again I do think when you've got 2 episodes left of Game of Thrones, I would be surprised if someone significant doesn't die in the next episode because I think that's your table set for the finale, right? Is finally losing a truly important character, what we call top tier character. I could see dying at the end of 5.
And to pull from out of the show lore, when Emilia Clarke was on Jimmy Kimmel, she said episode 5 is nuts.
So every episode.
Yeah, but she singled out 5.
Yeah, all right. Oh gosh.
I think I have to sneeze, so I'm gonna kick it over to Lon real quick. Lon, what are people saying on the tweets?
Oh wow, very back and forth in the chat room. There were 4 tweets in a row. Roberto, this episode was great. Michael, this show has gotten dumb. Devin, jumped the shark when they went north to bring Becca White. Austin, these episodes have been good. So that's what I mean. You can't get a straight answer in the chat room. A lot of people are wanting to talk about Clegane Bowl, are really looking forward to Clegane Bowl. That's definitely a thing that's on everybody's mind. And one last thing, a lot of disagreement about Rhaegal. A lot of people are saying that was the shocking character death, that anything can happen on Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
We lost a dragon in mid-flight suddenly. What do you guys think about that?
I will say, out of the 2 deaths, that was the one that surprised me. Because, I mean, again, I've been preparing for Missandei's death for a while now, so I was surprised. I was surprised at how brutal it looked with the midair. Like, him getting hit with the arrow, you have just enough seconds to be like, oh, crap, this is happening. And then he gets the one through the neck. And it's just like,
Dragons
that was
hate that.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
They hate being killed.
Being shot in the neck. Yeah, that was rough. I mean, I guess he was on his last wings, but they were like, he'll get better, he was the one with the holes in his wings, right?
Yeah,
Like,
he was. Poor thing. He was injured already.
It felt like it did feel, though, coming right on the heels of poor Ghost being sent off to the north, that it was like, okay, they're doing all they can, and part of it, I think, is just practical, because this show, has a huge budget for TV, but it still has a limited budget compared to, say, Avengers Endgame, of taking away some of the special effects creatures. Now there's only one dragon to deal with, no direwolf.
Yeah.
So it did feel a little, because Ghost had just been sent off, when Rhaegal died, I'm like, it kind of feels like they're just doing what they can to say, let's get rid of those.
he wasn't sent off.
Okay, fine.
He's
Look,
being
I was
bold.
going to come back to this.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this later,
Ghost.
but
We're going to
put a
freaking
pin
talk
in
about
it.
Ghost.
Yeah.
Let's talk about. We want to talk about Ghost now, because I can talk about Ghost.
We can talk
right now.
about Ghost now, because I think people are getting way overblown on this. Jon is just boarding him. He's going on a dangerous vacation. He likely won't come back.
Ghost went to a farm up north. Is
He's
that
not
what you're
going to a farm
telling
up
me?
north. No, he's going to a doggy daycare where he can run around in the snowfields and hunt and chase tail and do whatever his dogs do.
I mean, again, this is where I talk about where I'm trying to come to each episode with a clean slate right now, because I just disagree with how the showrunners have handled so much. If you're talking about the lore of Azor Ahai, if you're talking about the Prince that was promised, I'm like, okay, fine, all right, fine, that's done. We're over it. We're not going to get that anymore. I understand. But that's also, you can just tell the elements that they don't care about. And it's that, and Ghost is another one. And
Yep.
it's like, it's such a big deal, not just in the books, but it was made up like this in the show. Even if you look in comparison to how Grey One's death was handled, to how Nymeria's send-off was handled, somebody pet the dog.
Pet him.
Somebody
That's what made me
pet the
mad.
Pet would've been
dog.
nice.
He just nodded at him.
He just nods at him from his horse. And by the way, he doesn't look like a direwolf. He just looks like an overfed dog. Like, he just looks slightly bigger than normal. Like, it's just... He got torn up in the battle, man.
I
Go
know.
hug him.
But Jon has a new pet, or had a new pet. He's got a
That
new...
he also sent off to go die. Great.
I'm just
Jon
gonna-
does not have a good track record.
It made me very mad at Jon. I'm just going to think about how Tormund will be very much nicer.
Yeah,
He'll be
he
much
really
better
is
for
gonna
Tormund
Ghost.
will be
better
better
off.
for him. Okay, but anyway, that's my rant. But getting back to with Rhaegal's death, I mean, I do feel like there was an element of convenience here, because first it was this big deal that this one big scorpion was built to try to take down dragons in that one battle, and then all of a sudden they've got like 30,
Yeah,
which
sure.
fine, okay, no problem. But at the same time, like, as we saw right after Rhaegal died, they're a really effective weapon against ships. Why have they not been using them this
Right.
entire time?
Well, they didn't exist.
Unless they did, though. They just kind of brought them back. So I feel like
I
they
guess
probably scaled them down a little bit for the show, made them a little easier to build. Like, there has to be a reason why these weren't in general use before, because man, they were effective
they
against
said
other
these
ships.
were new and improved, like in the after the episode ones. The Qyburn had been like, this is V2 of
Yeah.
the
Right,
Scorpion.
right.
And
This is the
Lana,
upgrade.
I couldn't tell and didn't do the research. How long ago was the Spoils of War when they tried that? Like, in universe timeline, how long have they had to improve the crossbow tech and to know that if you know that dragons are coming, you're about
Right.
to go to war with dragons, like, your whole survival depends on getting the big crossbow right. So that didn't upset me as much. I think that the aim was a bit convenient, but the fact that they exist and that they just strap giant crossbows on everything when you're about to go to war against someone with dragons.
Sure.
Okay.
I guess my argument is more like, if they're so effective in ocean battle, why
Right,
have they,
just have them all the time.
why not just have them all the time?
Yeah.
They were obviously very, very well done. I don't know. Any idea about like how long 2.0 came to come about.
I mean, that was last season. That was about halfway through last season, the Spoils of War.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess it hasn't even been a year, I wouldn't think.
It's
then.
hard to tell. Time
Yeah.
really
Well, they
is
come out with a new
jumping
iPhone
here.
every year. Like,
Especially
it's a
'cause you-
crossbow, make it better.
You feel like time is moving differently depending on what part of the world we're
True.
in.
Right.
Totally.
True.
Yeah, so I'm okay with, if it having been taken 2 years since that battle in game time as well. In showtime.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that, I have less problems with crossbow physics than I do with just Euron in general.
Oh, yeah.
Just being this kind of, he's like Ramsay Bolton, but with zero character background information.
He needs to die yesterday.
Yeah.
It's fine.
This is a big problem, I
They
think.
introduced him so late, and he's so important that it's like, I don't even know you, and you're killing everyone.
They introduced him so late. Then they tried. You could tell that they kind of quickly tried to revamp him, because if you look at him in season 6 versus season 7, season 7's where he became like snarky, like I love being evil, Euron. Because season 6 he's just kind of this like grim guy who kills his brother.
He comes out of
He's a
nowhere
Greyjoy.
and just throws Balon over the
Greyjoy's
back.
still
Yeah,
Greyjoy,
but they don't
yes.
give him that swagger. Like season 7
Yeah.
added the swagger, but we don't care about him. It's no offense to the actor or anything. It's just that this is a person brought in so late. There's nothing, nothing about him except that like I'm evil and I want to work with Cersei. So it is crazy that so much is being put on him right now. That basically he's the secondary villain on the show at this moment.
Yeah.
It just feels like, why are we spending so much time with him? And I guess it would be the ultimate sort of fu to the fans if like he's triumphant at the end, like he sits on the Iron Throne.
Yeah,
I respect
but
that.
there was some talk about whether or not he was actually going to remain loyal to Cersei, or whether he might like actually turn and run. But I mean, it does seem like, especially with the prince in her belly, that he's going to stay true blue. But there's a lot of question of loyalty on this show, with different characters kind of seemingly loyal and then kind of turning around.
Do tell, Michele.
I mean,
Like who?
loyalty down here. I did actually agree with this, but I know a lot of people and a lot of fans had an issue with Sansa promising Jon not to tell his secret, and then literally the next scene just turning around and telling it to Tyrion. But I actually thought this was pretty consistent with how Sansa has been in the last few seasons, because when she's able to see an advantage and it's better for her family, she's gonna take it. So, I mean, telling Jon she's going to, pinky swear and not tell his secret, and then actually using it to gain an advantage, I thought actually really worked.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's like, to gain an advantage with what, though? It's more like she's just trying to get rid of Dany at this point. Like,
But she thinks that's better for her family and to keep the North. So
Yeah.
she's loyal to the North, she's loyal to her family, and the best way to do that is if Jon sits on the throne.
I guess so. I don't know. It seems a little soon to get rid of Dany. Maybe wait until, like, they take over and then do it or something like that. It seems like a little rash to me, but I don't know. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I actually was more annoyed with Jon, though, because, and I know it's being consistent that, like Ned Stark, the father who raised him, he is sort of doing the honorable thing to a fault, because Dany says, "Don't tell your sisters," and he's like, "I'm going to go tell my sister." And it's like, it just seems so naive of him to not think there'd be ramifications, because clearly,
Also, by the
Sansa-
way, not his sisters.
not his sisters, but they are. They were
Cousins?
raised together.
Cousins.
They're cousins
Yeah.
technically.
But they're- yeah.
yeah, they're his sisters.
They're his
As far as
sisters.
who he was raised with. But it's like he immediately goes to them, and it's just very naive of him to think that look at Sansa and Dany's issues, that this might not have huge ramifications to tell them. So if anything, I was sort of more annoyed at Jon. But even though it is being consistent, that this is something Jon would do. It was funny when they had the conversation. Was it Varys and Tyrion about like, okay, 8 people know now, and now it's just that means everyone's gonna know.
Yeah, I just thought that Sansa was really practical, and she, like, valued stability at this point more than anything else. She's concerned about, like, who's going to feed the horses and stuff like that. And then, like everyone says, like, this is a powder keg, and she's throwing a match on it.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed with her reasoning. It's a weird showdown for me, because it just seems like they really are amping up this conflict between Dany and basically everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, they have her kind of going all Mad Queen. They have her, I mean, even in the last couple seasons, her kind of reason for being and her reason for taking the throne has not been for the right of the people. it's for, because I deserve it, because it's my right, because it's my throne. You're taking what's mine. And I mean, it's become so heavy-handed lately. I mean, even the speech where she says, I'm here to free everyone from tyrants. It's such a tyrannical speech.
I think that was on purpose, though.
No, but that's my point. Is like,
Yeah.
I don't like where they're taking Dany's character with that, and I feel like they're amping it up that way on purpose to maybe get people more on Jon's side rather than and turn against her, which I just think is just a little too obvious.
It feels like they're simplifying things. I think that is my big issue with this episode a lot, was that they were going to sort of I don't want to say lowest common denominator. Everything was being simplified and taking away any nuance to it. And even with Dany, especially the way they talked about her, the way she's acting. I was having a conversation last night. It's funny, you have so many post Game of Thrones like Slack and text conversations, but I think it was with Roth. But we were talking about how it didn't even make sense that Varys and Tyrion were so saying, what if she shared the throne with Jon if they were just married? And one of them was like, well, does she seem like she wants to share the throne? And I was like, well, but she's been willing to do that in the past. She was willing to have marriages that she knew would be important.
She did have a political marriage,
yeah. So it just seems strange that they're like, no, she wouldn't do that. And I'm like, well, what is the ramifications of that? I mean, what is she thinking about legacy? Because
she clearly doesn't care about Essos. She does not care about the East, and I would love for them to cut away just once to Dario, and the whole thing is on fire. Like, what have we done?
What about the mysterious new Prince of Dorne? Where did he come from?
That's actually
that was an
I would like to meet
moment.
them. I think that she's been pretty single-minded about the throne being hers from the get-go, and she's taken steps backwards in character development, but I don't think that they haven't been justified, or at least I get it. She's lost her dragon child. She's lost her closest advisor. She's Cersei staring her in the face, like her sworn enemy for life. I can see how she could revert back to some of her worst instincts. I don't think she's going to go full Mad Queen though, just because the show is telegraphing it so hard.
Yeah, that's what it's hard for me to kind of go all in on that theory. We'll see, but I mean, it seems like Varys is ready to turn against her completely. And just talks about going for the realm.
Right, which is interesting because he had been sort of he was so sort of shifty at first, but then it turned out he was all Team Dany, That ended up being sort of the big reveal. But now he's like, no, it's for whatever's best for the land. But I guess that's, again, why I think that they are making it too simple, because I totally agree. It's like Dany is obsessed with that throne and thinks it is her right. It's little things like she wouldn't accept, having a husband, apparently, but that doesn't match. In the past, we would have thought, she'll do anything to be on the throne, including having a marriage. And it's like, she likes, if not loves, Jon, so it doesn't seem like this would be a horrible thing for her. But right now they're just they want to make it so sort of bullet point ahead. She is turning into the Mad Queen, that I think they're taking away a lot of the nuance. And I think that's where it's faltering right now. It's very direct in a way that it feels the show's lost some of its complexity.
Yeah, and so has she really earned Jon's undying loyalty at this point? Because he's still, though he does spill the beans, he's still fighting by her side and has zero interest in taking the throne from somebody who looks like they're about to commit, small genocide.
Light genocide.
A little light genocide.
A little genocide with your coffee in the morning.
With the Starbucks.
Yeah. Is this self-serving for Jon? Is he just afraid to call her out on her BS?
A little bit of that, although it is funny about thinking about how Jon keeps being the accidental leader. I don't care about
failing upwards.
Yeah, he becomes the Lord Commander. He becomes king in the North. Maybe he'll end up on the Iron Throne. Yeah, I don't know. Jon is a weird character because, of course, he is very good and righteous, but at the same time, he seems so naive and so. Sometimes dim. When he does some of the things he does without sort of thinking it through.
Yeah, I think he'd make a terrible king.
Yeah.
I think that he gets outwitted constantly, and people who are good generals generally don't make good political leaders all the time.
Yeah, he hasn't had kind of a hero moment since maybe arguably Hardhome, when he was actually able to save quite a lot of the wildlings. It's just. But again, they're pushing us so hard towards Jon being the better reluctant hero that I don't want to believe that that's what's actually going to happen.
Well, what they're kind of exploring with Jon, to me at this point, is Game of Thrones has really been, from the get-go, honesty will get you killed. If you are honest, if you're upfront with everybody and you're totally on the level, you will die.
Yeah.
And he's already died from that before, and he's still going. And Ned Stark's died. Everybody who's honest and kind of keeps things at the surface loses. is this the final, like, if you just persist enough and you're good enough and you're nice enough, like maybe once in a while things come your way?
I just feel like
doubt it.
Yeah, because I ultimately, as much as we like to joke about George R. R. Martin loves to kill people you love and dark things happen, I also don't think he's like a nihilist. I don't think the books are aiming towards a like everything horrible happens and there's no happiness at the end. I think there will be some happiness at the end of the books. But when we're talking about the TV show, yeah, Jon, he is too much of the typical like chosen one paradigm hero. Mm-hmm. It would feel very strange, uncharacteristic, and I think unsatisfying if he ends up at the end of the show just saving the day.
And the showrunners have shown that they're good with not making him the obvious hero just by having Arya kill the Night King.
Right.
That they straight out say they knew it was the obvious choice to have Jon do it.
Yeah.
That's why they wanted to have Arya do it. Their reasoning for that I might argue with, but sure, that's what they've decided to do. So I think they'll hopefully maybe use the same kind of logic for why Jon may not just end up being the king.
Right.
And this ending the way that we all think it's going to.
But if it's not Jon, everyone's screwed, because you brought up loyalty. It's like Cersei has no loyalty except for what she can buy, and Daenerys has no loyalty because she's going to be a conqueror who just burns people to death.
And they've gotten rid of almost all of her entire support system. She has Drogon and maybe Jon.
So there are no fit rulers for the Iron Throne at this point.
She just legitimized Gendry, when
that happened, I saw it happening like a second before everyone else did, but at the same, I was sort of surprised by that, but I actually, my first initial thought with that, I like that she did it. My first initial thought was, oh God, this is Blackfire all over again,
right.
Rebellion, but then the reasoning that they used to actually earn his loyalty by having him be Storm's End, Lord of Storm's End, I thought was very smart. I'm like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's exactly why you do that sort of thing. That's why you give castles to people after a battle, is to get their loyalty and to ensure that they remain true to you. They become your bannermen.
But not one with like a pretty damn good claim to the Iron Throne. Although if she legitimized it, then I don't think it matters, because
they can't undo it. You can never. By a monarch.
Because Daenerys isn't a legitimate monarch, so his claim wouldn't really count if
it could go to court.
It could go to court.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one more point on loyalty that I want to talk about. Loyalty can be bought in many ways, like with Bronn.
With Bronn, thank you.
Yeah. I like
wanted
that
to bring
scene.
That up.
I really enjoyed it. I don't. Bronn, but also Lon. Chime in with your thoughts. Bronn is like the guy like playing the hottest like blackjack streak, and he just keeps doubling his money and doubling his money and doubling his money. And will his luck ever run out? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, he is a funny sort of wild card. He's a very likable character. I think that he kind of he dissipated a bit in the second half of this series. Like, he was much more prominent early on, and then unfortunately they saddled with that Dorne storyline that didn't really work. But after that storyline, Jaime still had a lot to do, where Bronn kind of was less important. But when he shows up, you're always like, I like Bronn. And of course, the fact that he is always in it for himself. He is in a show that has had some dishonorable characters find honor. He sort of stands alone by never finding honor, but still being kind of likable for that reason. Basically, he's the likable Euron, right? Yeah. We've been invested in him from the beginning. So it was fun to see that conversation and him just show up and be like, okay, here's the latest thing your sister did, and I don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah, and he was genuinely threatening. I thought he might actually kill one of them, and I think it'll be hilarious if and when he's Lord of Highgarden.
Yeah, exactly. I like that they gave him that. What else are you going to say in the moment? He's just going to put a crossbow through your head otherwise. Yeah. I thought it was very true to his character. I really liked the scene. I liked that, really, as far as loyalty is concerned, it kind of means that he is siding with Dany on this, because if he doesn't kill the two brothers and Cersei ends up winning, that means he gets nothing.
Right.
So,
well, he's clearly very good at laying low.
Yeah.
He could definitely sneak around, but I thought that what he said was actually kind of maybe series-centric to the plot, where it's like, if you go back far enough, every great house is just some asshole who is willing to kill hundreds, if not thousands of people. And I think that could apply to Dany in a second. Like, she will become a king by murdering thousands of people.
What if one of the spin-offs is just Bronn, Lord of Highgarden, but it actually changes genres to a sitcom, and it's just kind of this Fawlty Towers-esque British sitcom?
Bronn
walks in and there's like a huge applause from the audience.
I'd
Just
watch
saying, I
that.
endorse that.
And the Arya Hound buddy cop
There you go.
horse movie.
And the whole series is just him and Lena Headey being in different rooms.
Yeah.
just walking away from each other.
Lon, I want to check in with you. What are the people saying? And I'm not doing a great job hosting. How can the people interact with us at this point, halfway through the show?
We're in the chat room. I'm looking for everything people are saying down there, so they can jump into the chat room, or they can use the hashtag Watching Thrones, which I'm also keeping an eye on. A lot of people are asking, why didn't Dany see Euron's fleet from atop a dragon? Did that bother anybody?
Yeah.
Good
well,
question.
yes and yes, sure. I think that the explanation
Plot fog.
The fog of plot was that Rhaegal had because his wing was hurt. They were flying at a lower altitude than they normally would. Well, they were, because he was like dipping and like he couldn't fly too high off the ground.
Right.
And he's clearly a good pirate. He knows he's ambushed a few people in his day. He knew which cliff to put his boat, but I don't know.
I want to watch like 5 more minutes of you trying to explain this.
I don't know. I Am the Batman made an interesting comment that he pointed out the last time there was a reluctant monarch, it actually didn't work out so well. It was King Robert, who said he finished Robert's Rebellion. He didn't actually want to be king, but they were like, well, you've got to. He was not actually a great king, so maybe a strike against Jon Snow there. And then Missandei. There's a lot of people in the comments that want to hear your guys' thoughts on the big death. That's what they're asking for.
Yeah, I kind of wish that. I mean, her last words at first was like, "Yeah, awesome, burn him down," and then I thought about it and I was like, she wouldn't say that. Like
She would.
No, because she's like, she lived through Marine and like she's Dany's advisor, and she's like, you know what? Like, remember last time you just like murdered everyone and it didn't go very well? Like, let's maybe slow your roll. Like, remember what we've learned. Let's calm down. Like, don't make the same mistake again.
I'm sorry, you're about to have your head chopped off by some blonde queen down south and you don't get to see your butterflies anymore. No, burn it to the ground. I think she's learned a bit from Dany. I'm okay with this.
I really think that she, if anyone, would have her head more in line with like the little people whose lives are about to get toasted from all of this.
Yeah.
And knowing, because that was a message to Dany. That wasn't just like, I'm a badass. That was like, here's my last words to you.
I think it's a lot of, you know what? I don't care about any of these Southerners. Like, forget all of them. All the Northerners were against us anyway. No,
Way
forget
harsh.
it. If this is the way, if this is the way that Dany's going to take her throne, I think Missandei's on board. I mean, yeah, maybe if she hadn't been captured and been at the point of a sword, she might be different. And that was another reason why I think losing her is going to be a problem for Dany, because Missandei has been such a tempering voice. But I can very easily see Missandei kind of turning on it. She was there with the first Dracarys, was the first kind of betrayal that Dany did against the slave owner after buying the Unsullied. Like, that was a good moment. She got to see that for Dany. This, to me, seems kind of like the same
but
thing.
her whole
She's
thing
like,
was
go
like,
for
she
it.
wanted to remove the slave owners and liberate the people of Marine, not burn Marine down to the ashes.
I feel okay with her thinking that this is the way of liberating it, getting rid of Blondie Queen over here.
Cleansing fire. I do think it speaks to, though, how we don't really know her that well, that, I think it's up for... I mean, because I lean towards what you say, right? That I feel like she wouldn't say, kill everyone in this city, as revenge for me. I don't think she would think that, but at the same time, I don't know, I guess I just was more frustrated because, again, as we talked about, the second she and Grey Worm had that, like, we're going to go to the beach after this conversation, it was like, target, on a show that had not been telegraphing deaths in the early days in the way that was, because that said, they are not getting the happy ending they are talking about right now. We expected one of them to die during the Battle of Winterfell. They both made it through that. A week later, she died. So I guess I was just more frustrated that, that really obvious time when they talked about what their happy ending they weren't going to get was what we expected.
Just a little later.
Yeah, she got one more week. But I do feel weird about that as her last word. It was a cool moment, but then you do think, does she want Dany to kill a bunch of innocent people? I don't know.
Well, to your point, though, I mean, when you're talking about Marine or Yunkai, you're talking about slaves. You're talking about people who were there against their will. She could see the city of King's Landing as a whole bunch of people choosing Cersei, and so screw them.
Yeah, it's kind of splitting hairs. They're all like...
I mean, I'm
in a feudal world, it's like a pretty
I'm not making the
thin
argument that
distinction.
they're not innocent people, but that, like, they did have a little bit of a choice to come and, be protected by Cersei.
Well, they were lied to, right? Wasn't there that line of like, Cersei, like, she's opened the gates to protect you all from the queen, so like they they think that they're about to get roasted alive, and Dany's about to prove them right.
I do feel like after what's happened in King's Landing in this series, would people think that's the safe place to go?
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like, remember when, the Sept blew up and there was, engulfed in horrific fire?
It even starts with that shot of her, the same shot that she had when she looked out over blowing up the Sept of Baelor.
Yeah.
Honestly, House Glover may have had it right. It's just like, we're going to our holdfast, we're hanging out there till all time. Just, go down to Dorne. I hear it's nice this time of year.
Dorne is great.
Get out of King's Landing.
The reeds are still in their swamp somewhere.
Exactly. They're still
Just gonna sit
alive,
the show
probably.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we, just to kind of change tack a little bit, just because I've been the one that was so upset about this last episode, are we pretty much just ready to declare all of the Azor Ahai and all the lore and all the magic of the show pretty much just dead?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, cool. All right,
moving on.
Okay, great. And that's the show. Thanks, guys.
There's no magic.
I think that ties into the send and go stuff, killing, there's still one dragon, but killing as many of the dragons off as they can. They are paring down this show, and one way they're doing it is by getting away from all of the magic, all of that mythology, which exists in the show, but is not their concern, I think, as we head towards the end. And a lot of fans obviously are very involved in that part of the show, but I think that they are saying, no, it's just got to be the character showdowns. We don't want to get bogged down in all the prophecies and all the stuff that is
made the books cool.
No, that's not what's made the books cool.
One of the things.
Go read The Hobbit again. Lon, what was the line that they said that from Davos that kind of summed up the show's attitude towards magic?
I don't know the exact one, but he's basically like, the Lord of Light, he comes down, he leaves, no blessings, you don't know what he wanted. And then they both sort of turn and they look at, the political intrigue going on in front of them, and it's like, well, we've got to worry about these enemies, and Davos is like, more of this, and that's it. And then,
and then the Lord of Life, he effed off, and that's it, we're done.
You will never really understand the supernatural goings on. The lords and gods do what they want, and we're still stuck here just figuring it out day to day. So to me that felt very much like the whole show being like, don't worry about any of that anymore. We're done. We're going to focus on the politics.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I've kind of had to adjust my perception of going into these episodes of just really, let's just listen to what they are telling us.
Yeah.
And they're very clearly telling us that they're just done with it. They don't care.
Yeah, I think that there was an age of magic in the past that is faded by the time this show begins, and it kind of poked its head above the ground, got stabbed in the back, and went away. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, actually, this is a question I want to ask you guys if you've thought about it at all, because it's been brought up that George R. R. Martin has said that the elongated seasons, there's no cosmological reason for it. So a lot of people kind of attribute that to the magic. So do you think with the death of the Night King that spring has kind of come back and we're actually going to start seeing regular seasons? Because if you go down to King's Landing, it looks bright and
nice.
sunny.
Yeah, great.
It was summertime
Very
down
well
in
lit.
King's Landing right now. The scene came up with that bright blue sky behind, and all of us just sort of blinking out into the sun like the Lion King. It was
Winter
a little
came.
crazy. It's
Winter came fast.
Winter came, winter went bye-bye. Yeah. So do you think that had to do with the death of the Night King?
I
Or
feel like
just
you kind of have to. I do wish the show had more explicitly explained that, right? Because we never saw winter engulf King's Landing. It's not like we saw a
we
difference.
saw two snowflakes.
Right. So it does feel like I can easily go with the idea that, okay, they killed the Night King, and that has ended the long winter, which wasn't so long after all.
We don't know really how long anything is anymore.
Right. I had to wear my jacket yesterday. But I do feel like it should have been on-screen acknowledgement. You could have even had Cersei talk about, maybe they haven't gotten word of what happened, but they've seen something change around them, because it just seems like, okay,
maybe.
that winter is coming has been so ingrained in our head.
The Citadel is like, do we have a raven for this to
Which
send
color
out to
raven?
everyone?
The spring multicolored
ravens aren't alive yet.
Yeah. I don't know. It has to be magic, because there's no orbit or rotation that would make sense of 6-year winter and then a 17-year spring and stuff like that. So it had to be magic. I'm just gonna go with Arya changed the seasons with by stabbing that guy in the back.
Arya is Captain Planet.
Yeah,
it was weather master.
It didn't even look as cold as usual up north. So Yeah.
It didn't. I mean, granted, Cersei's still rocking the long sleeve velvet cosplay dream that I want to wear, but so she hasn't quite gotten back to a sleeveless dress yet. But
Right.
still, it looked discernibly warmer.
And as far as Azor Ahai goes,
I'm sorry, who? I don't know this name anymore.
Yeah, the name that was
Bassavand
never uttered on the
Azor
show,
Ahai.
despite the amount of times you've talked about it,
I
Michele.
don't know what you're talking about.
Although it could still be, Jaime or Arya could kind of do some more things to qualify. Who knows? Red herring?
My personal feeling, of course, is that it does feel like red herring. Or it'll be one of those things that it's what it is on the show right now, which is if you were deeply invested in that, maybe it happened. Or maybe it didn't. It would shock me.
By the way, that totally tracks with religion. It's like, I think that this show, the reason I don't buy into it as literal fact is the show is kind of taking the notions of chivalry and heroism and stuff like that and being like, yeah, but actually here's what was really going on. And it's doing the exact same thing with legends and religion and spirituality. It's it's kind of vague stuff that you can make fit if you squint, but it's not what's really happening on the ground.
Right. It just seems like, so we have an article you should check out at fandom.com that is asking that question, is Azor Ahai a red herring the whole time? And it goes a lot into this fan theories article our UK-based editor Kim Taylor Foster put together, where she goes over a lot of what the prophecy is in the books, the idea that maybe people have already been mixing up a couple prophecies into one. But of course, prophecies in I think all fiction, but Game of Thrones, they've said it too, it's people could misinterpret them. People could think that it means this one thing specifically when it doesn't. The whole idea is, could Arya be? But some people would say absolutely not, and some would say she could from a certain point of view. And I do feel, my personal feeling again is that the show is not going to have suddenly a huge monologue about Azor Ahai coming up in the next 2 episodes. And saying, this was it,
I would just start laughing.
right.
Just a wall of text scrolls up to be like, here's the legend.
That'd be amazing. That's how it ends.
Spencer walks out of the room.
That's the last 10 minutes. Is the. I do think that doesn't mean the show hasn't dealt with it in its own way, which again, mileage will vary on if you are satisfied with that.
Sure.
If they gently dealt with it, maybe, versus explicitly saying this is what it is.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I think we're all on the same page, that is not what Benioff and Weiss are most invested in on the show, is getting into that sort of lore and prophecy.
Right.
I personally feel it's, Rey and Kylo Ren. They're Azor Ahai, just together.
Oh,
Have
okay.
fun, Internet.
Well, Benioff and Weiss are working in Star Wars now.
I
so they
mean,
can-
I had that
Exactly.
spicy Night King is Snoke take, so
Yes.
why not?
Yeah. Which was, yeah.
The other article I wanted to mention, besides you should check out the Azor Ahai one about him being a red herring, or maybe not. We also have one about the idea of who is the final boss now that the Night King is defeated. Cersei seems the most logical at this point, but as we're talking about, could there be a final swerve?
No.
Is it Dany?
Nope.
But we also talk about, again, going over a bunch of different ideas, is could it somehow be Bran?
Not a chance.
And so,
Are you kidding?
and
Bran?
this is again where maybe in George R. R. Martin's depiction, or maybe a different version of the Endgame, I feel like it could be Bran, but not
Didn't
the
Bran
way.
say I'm done, you guys?
And that's the but again, that's the show, because I think Bran, we felt, was going to be a lot more significant than he has been. And I could see a version of this final season where Bran is the quote unquote final boss, because there's a lot more going on, but because the show, I think, has simplified things a lot. Now with 2 episodes left, yes, we could, there's been talk about what did the Night King mean? Was he looked at Bran in a certain way? Did that look have meaning? I think it is open to interpretation, but now it would be very difficult in these last 2 episodes to have Bran suddenly spring out of that chair.
I've been a Bran truther all along.
I just don't see a purpose for Bran in these last couple episodes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't see a purpose for him.
But in a way, it mixes into the pushing aside the lore and
completely.
and some of the fantasy element, because he does represent that.
He does, which makes me think that the showrunners are just going to have Bran discover werewood porn, and he's just going to be off, wide-eyed for the next 2 episodes.
Solid
Well,
spin-off.
there's been
That's
so
it.
much. We were talking before we started filming about how a big theme this season has been people losing their virginity. We didn't know that going in. So Bran could still have that big moment if they wanted to.
I'm talking about
We'll see.
it. Talking about that.
Yeah, but speaking of virginity losing, before we got out of
Where's
here,
the segue going?
we had to talk
It's
about
raining,
we had to talk about
guys.
Jaime and Brienne. We don't have
yes.
a couple name for them yet, do we?
I'm sure the internet does.
Jaten.
Bramy?
Bramy.
Bramy.
I think I've heard,
Bramy.
I've heard Bramy, which
Pinky
sure,
and the Brame.
Why not? All right. Oh God, image.
Look, I really liked the very real tension that built up between them over the seasons and how it exploded in one night of passion. And people were upset though with I guess her breaking down in tears specifically when Jaime left.
Yeah.
That was out of character. To that, I say she's been through a lot in the last 48 hours. She fought the army of the dead.
Yeah.
Right.
She lost her virginity to her longtime crush.
So, I mean, let's just talk about, first of all, like the fact that it even happened at all. I know a lot of people were mad that she went with Jaime and she didn't go with Tormund. And I'm like, really? Have you not been paying attention for the last 2 seasons? But okay. The main thing that actually bothered me about it was that he was just hammered. And I really didn't like that they just for me personally, I didn't really like that this like really awesome thing that I was really kind of hoping for and that he would come to and it would be like a good moment for both of them was just sort of like, okay, but is consent real? You know, I mean, it's just like, it's fine, and I know they're both into it, and I know that was not really an issue, but I just personally didn't like the fact, because then you've got this, like, weird moment where he's in bed with her later, and is that a moment of regret on his face now that he's maybe a little bit sobered up? And I just, basically, I wanted him to come to this with, like, his eyes completely open, because otherwise it's not fair to Brienne. And she's been through so much. I'm happy it happened. Definitely all the girls in the room like squealed. We were super happy. We were just like, yay! But thank God Brienne gets that moment too. But I wasn't totally happy with how it occurred. What do you guys think?
I mean, certainly yes. This has been a long build up to this. Did not come out of nowhere at all. And I've loved that dynamic. The Brienne Jaime dynamic, I think, is one of the most interesting on the show. And how they met, how they bonded along the way. I've loved the scenes of them together, and there was something definitely satisfying about seeing them get together, as it were. It was all a little muddy, it was, both the way he was drunk, and then it was funny because there's another scene later where we see that another night, it looks like he spent the night with her once again.
Yes, that was my thing too.
But it's a little strange how it's all muddied, and I did not like how emotional she got when he left, mostly because Brienne is so stoic and so sort of fierce, and she had such a wonderful open emotional moment just a couple weeks ago in an episode I think is the best one this season and one of the best episodes of the show, which was when she's knighted, and that was her big open emotion moment. So I didn't like that then a couple weeks later they're like, oh no, he's leaving and now she's going to start crying. It just felt like too much for a character who holds things back, and one was earned and the other I felt just, I don't know, it just felt like a little too much.
Well, that's
for
the
me.
thing
I'd really like to know what the chat thinks about this too, but yeah, Spencer,
Yeah, did
go
people
ahead.
think she was crying? I saw there's some confusion that like she was crying like, oh no, my new boyfriend left me, when to me I saw that as, oh, he's gonna die. Like he's going to basically not come back.
So I mean, personally, the main reason that I think she was crying and she was so broken over this, and I completely agree with it, because if you listen to what Jaime says, he doesn't believe he's a good man.
Right.
And I feel like, in the last couple seasons, really since he's met Brienne, it's been all about his arc, and it's been about his character kind of trying to redeem himself for all of the bad stuff that he's done. And him coming to Brienne and them having a moment and them allowing themselves to be happy should have been like a culmination of that, and then they get to go be themselves. And that this, for both him and Brienne sees this in him, is such a huge step backward, and it's it doesn't matter what I do in my life, I'm never going to be a good man. Cersei is hateful, and so am I. Like that to me, just this acknowledgement from like seemingly just from him that he'll never be good enough for her, enough for Brienne, and good enough for himself, was what was so heartbreaking to her. That's what I took out of it. I definitely didn't take it in a, I still love my sister and I'm gonna go be with her, or I'm just leaving you. It's like I'm not good enough to be with you.
Yeah, I do think it's complicated, and I actually do like that it's complicated, because I don't think it's as simple as, like you said, I don't think it's as simple as Jaime going, I'm going to go back and be with her. I also don't think it's as simple as I'm going to go back and kill her.
Well, I
think
it was
he
very
needs
clearly
to deal with her, like one way or the other. It's like he wants to try to stop her probably, but I think it's all discombobulated for him too.
I guess maybe there will be like some 11th hour, misunderstandings or moments of doubt. But I think that to me, I read that as he's definitely, I can't be with you because I have to settle this first. I have to go kill her and just end this, because she's always been turning me into this awful person. She's like, she made me push people out windows. She made me slaughter all these people. Like, I can't be with you until I deal with this.
But even as Tyrion said in the last episode when, talking to Jaime, it's like, no, she never fooled you. You knew exactly what she was and you loved her anyway. So to me, that means that Jaime is just kind of taking that in and saying, yeah, I did know what she was. I did all of this bad stuff for Cersei, but it was my choice. I am the one who chose to push a kid out the window. I am the one who was going to slaughter all these people who killed my cousin. It was my choice to do that, knowing full well what Cersei was. Like, my fate is entwined with her. I don't think he plans on coming back to Brienne at all.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think one way or the other, he thinks that, he this will be dealt with. Cersei will be dealt with. Is he going to kill her? Is he going to kill them both? But it didn't feel like he felt like he was coming back. I mean, look, I did like him bringing up all that history. Obviously, pushing Bran out the window, no one's going to forget. But it is, when I rewatched the whole series before the new season, and I was like, oh yeah, he killed his cousin, and it was very it was actually probably the most nonchalant, evil thing he did on the show.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't as purely motivated as pushing Bran out, But I was glad they brought it up. But it did feel like, I don't know, it's murky, and I guess right now, I'm okay with that because, as we said, things have gotten kind of simplified on the show, but I guess his exact motivations are a little harder to decipher, but I guess I like that.
Well, I'm rooting for them because...
And Lon, what is the chat saying on this?
The chat room, first of all, they feel like it's okay for Brienne to be a strong character and also cry.
Absolutely.
They took issue with the idea that maybe she shouldn't be crying. They felt that she was crying for Jaime rather than because she feels bad for herself. A little bit of a split. Is she crying for Jaime because she's certain he's going to die? Or is she crying for Jaime because she's sad that he feels like he's not a good person and he has to go back and deal with his sister?
It can be both.
Yeah. Or both.
Yeah. I will say that even though I felt it was maybe uncharacteristic for her to cry again so close to crying, I do think no matter what, it was over his decision and what it meant for him, not stay with me. Like, I don't think we were supposed to think it was like, come on, boo, I don't think that was ever supposed to be.
So there you go. It's okay to cry. We've settled it.
I'm sorry. Was there a question? Because I'll fight all of you while crying.
I'll cry.
Strong men also cry.
Let's just flash through the other fun relationships as kind of housekeeping. Arya and the Hound. I just want this to be the spinoff. I really want to just watch their ride down the King's Road. Yeah. I want that to take 7 seasons by itself. Now that they've both grown into the people they've become.
It'll be total silence the entire time.
But people will stumble across them, and they'll have to solve problems like David Carradine and Kung Fu, and it'll be great.
It's a really cool dynamic. It's one of the more interesting ones on the show. The fact that he was on her list, but now they have this strange and fascinating bond. It was also, I do have to bring up that it was nice to see the Hound and Sansa have a scene in this episode. They hadn't, had a real moment. I know then it led to sort of a controversial moment, which is when he said, you should have come with me. And she said, well, if I hadn't, basically her saying that, by not going with him and all the horrible things that happened with Littlefinger and Ramsay forged her into who she was. And there's some people who really take issue with that, being like, is she saying that it's good I went through horrible, like, rape and abuse, it made me who I am? I think it's a little more complicated than that.
I can understand why people think that way.
But I see why people,
I feel like it's just her being practical about it again.
But I think so too.
Practical's
about
just
where
kind of
she
her
is at
where
this
she's
moment.
like, well, it happened, so.
But I was just glad that they shared a moment together because it felt like that was a little bit, not that they spent a lot of screen time together, but it was significant, and him trying to get her to leave with him again, because I just rewatched the show, it was in my mind. So that was nice to see. And the Hound is just a great character. I think the Hound is so great for everyone to bounce off of. Yeah. Like, like he works well with everyone.
So as we were talking, it just popped into my head of how the finale of this of next episode could go. So I feel like the Hound is going to get there before Jon, because he's with a whole army and they're just on horseback. Like, it's feasible that they could arrive first, right? Or at the same time, around the same time. Could they do like a trial by combat instead of fighting it out? And that's how we get Clegane Bowl, is like, guys, let's settle. I'm just going to ride out. Send out the mountain. We're going to fight to settle this in front of everyone.
But what's the crime someone's accused of, really? Like, they're claiming to the throne?
Usurpation.
That'd be intense.
Just putting it on trial. That could be interesting.
I don't know. I feel like they both feel like Cersei thinks, I don't think Cersei thinks that she's got this in the bag. Far from it. I think she's like, well, I have a shot. And she might say, single combat with the mountain? it's kind of better odds than I've got now. I'm surrounded.
And then if he loses, then wildfire for everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Cersei still believes she's sitting a little prettier. I think the odds are a little more equal than we initially might have thought.
Yeah.
That's what that scene where they're going over how many Unsullied and how many Dothraki and everything they have left was to kind of let us know, hey, the North hasn't been completely annihilated. Like, the odds are definitely a little bit just more equal. And I feel like that's what Losing the Dragon was about, too, is to kind of like, I believe this, that we are supposed to think going into this battle that they're kind of on equal footing.
Yeah, I think so, too.
So I don't think there's any reason that Cersei would throw away those odds on the possibility of single combat. But
I think the Mountain in single combat's better than even odds.
yeah, they also, I mean, in theory, if you want to get for show reasons, is that they did do away with trial by combat, which is the entire reason why she did the Walk of Shame. Now, I mean, she can just be like, yeah, I'm queen, I'm reinstating trial by combat. But in theory, in the world of the show, that no longer exists.
All right.
So that's possible.
We're going to
But
get
I think
Clegane Ball.
We're getting Clegane Ball.
The way they've serviced us fans to this point.
Exactly.
yeah.
Like, whereas
Oh,
the
yeah.
books don't think they're going to do it, I think, the show will get it.
I think the showrunners have definitely told us that that's happening. I mean, they literally told us that last season when the Hound told his brother he's
Just
coming
bringing
for him.
back the Hound in this significant way, where it feels like the books probably won't. It just feels like they're aiming towards this, But I will say that Dany should have listened to Sansa, saying we need to rest up. Let everyone heal up, rest up.
Then
you can spot giant boats shooting arrows at you.
Let
close.
the Hound have another night. Maybe actually get a girl this time, as opposed to pushing her away and right into Podrick's arms.
I know.
I did notice.
Oh, we need to finally talk about Podrick having a three-way.
Which we said, but
Okay.
Podrick having a three-way is like low for him. Like,
it
for
is
him,
actually.
it's
Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it is for him. It's like,
just a day that
just
ends
two
in
girls
Y.
tonight? Okay.
I'll watch an entire show of Pod just smiling at different things. Although I want to
reaction shots.
ask the chat this. I want to ask you guys this. This is a tiny little thing that I noticed because we've never found out what he did with those prostitutes all those seasons ago.
think that he's saying-
And then we just learned he had a golden voice. And then during the drinking game with Tyrion and Brienne, and when Tyrion calls her out for being a virgin, Pod drinks.
Yeah.
Did anyone else notice
Yeah.
this? So
I think he
feel
was
like
like on
they're having a
Brienne's
little-
team,
Okay,
right? Like he was
maybe.
playing like as her
Maybe-
squire.
maybe that was why. Because
Right.
I saw that and I was like, wait a second, wait, what?
I think they were playing doubles or something
yeah,
like
okay,
that.
that's entirely possible. That's acceptable. Okay, just
Well,
wanted to ask.
there
Just
you
wanted
go.
to ask about it.
Hey, Lon, before we head out, anything the chat would like us to
Arya
address?
and
Or
Gendry.
Yeah,
Hello.
the show got it. Arya and Gendry is what they
got
still
it.
wanted to
Talk
hear about.
Arya and
newly
Gendry.
legitimized Lord of Storm's End,
Storm's End.
Yes.
and a little inexperienced, but sure, he'll pick up the slack.
Oh, poor summer child. Oh,
And,
God.
yeah, he was riding high, man. He had some sex. He won some wars.
Made some weapons.
Became a lord. Might as well take a big swing. They've been working so far, but he had to know better than
Not
that.
so much. You had to know. And actually, I mean, speaking of virgins, there was another theory that when he said that there were three, that he was actually lying, and Arya knew that, which is why she said something along the lines of like, "Don't we deserve to know how this feels before the end?" Because she can tell when anyone is lying. So it's a possibility that she was also his first. I just want to throw that out there. I like it, so I'm just gonna go with it because I think it also might kind of inform his decision here to be like, yeah, I'm gonna marry the first chick that I bang because she's cool and because I'm a lord now, and
I'm
that's
lord,
what we
I'm
do.
drunk. Why not?
Yeah, why
Yeah.
not? Oh, it was just the whole room I watched with when he gets down on one knee. We're just like, no, oh, cringe. Oh, the cringe is real.
Gendry will be fine though. He'll be just fine.
bounce back.
He's got
You
a
think?
castle. He's got that. He's got that face. He's got the name. He's got a big hammer. He'll be
He
just
has that
fine.
big hammer.
muscles. Yeah.
I'm not worried about him.
He'll be fine.
And Arya, if she lives, is definitely going to be like running, an assassin training school in Bravos. She's not going to be like doing the housework.
She doesn't want to be tied down.
Yeah, it was a nice call out to the first season of the It's Not Me. Sure, I like the through thread of that with her, that with Nymeria. Good call, good job dialogue, people. But yeah, it's just talk about characters not acting consistent. I mean, man, Gendry, you've watched this girl for like 4 seasons now. You didn't know what you were getting into. You literally, she killed the Night King, man.
They were drunk. It was like
they
you
were
might as
just
well
on that
put your heart on the line.
Is that what you guys do? Is that a thing?
We propose.
If I'm named a lord, yes. The one time I was named a lord, I was like, all right.
Is that the mistake I've been making this whole time? I need to like have someone legitimize is the boyfriend? Okay, got it. Okay.
Gotta go
his
legit,
castle.
otherwise it doesn't count. Right?
He has to get offered a castle first.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Cool.
So Eric, people were Googling Storm's End, and we were providing answers. Any other?
Yeah. I mean, what has been trending? No shocker. A lot of the deaths. Well, I say a lot. There was only 2, but so Missandei, Rhaegal. People have been looking up dragons, but then Storm's End, and I understand because Storm's End suddenly they were talking about it a lot last night. You haven't missed anything. We've never seen Storm's End on the show. I think they've named it. They've mentioned it a couple times. It is the ancestral home of the Baratheons.
Mm-hmm.
It's come under siege many times, but never been taken.
Mm.
But you can read all about that if you look at the Storm's End entry on Fandom.
All right, enough plugs, man. All right.
I'm just saying.
But go on Fandom and you can enter next week's life/death pool.
That's right.
Whichever one it is, whether we think people are going to live or die. And please keep talking to us. #Watching Thrones. Keep leaving comments. Starbucks Club! Oh my God.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? Is Jon a time traveler?
How will that factor into the final episode?
Yeah, is that Kit Harington?
We're getting so close.
The night
Was
is
it a
dark
pumpkin
and full of
spice latte?
espresso.
What did he have? Is that why Danny was upset? Et cetera, et cetera. You can talk about that in the comments below.
Learning it's actually a rainbow frappuccino. It's made its way back, and it's just Jon. That's not your drink, man.
That's more Tormund style. Lon, thank you so much for Man in the Chair.
My pleasure.
Eric, please don't be a stranger.
I won't.
Michelle, as always,
Good to see you.
good to see you. I'm Spencer Gilbert. You know where to find us at our tweets and stuff like that. Why don't you just come back here next week, same time, same place. Thanks for watching.